race. I know.
Brenda,
I
please
know.
tell me you didn't say that.
Brenda
Yeah,
is over, like,
racism.
10 levels deep, and
Racism
you
isn't
guys are
restricted
fucking
to race.
eating
What
it
do you
up.
mean? Can you
It
elaborate?
isn't.
What's the definition?
You guys are so dumb.
It's
This
a
is- that's you.
it's a oppression by the state of a minority.
That's
And
racism.
it doesn't. Yeah, that's institutional racism.
Okay, so
And
why
so
why is that not something that's entailed in racism rather than something that's not racism?
So wait, Brenda, wait. Are you telling me that if I don't discriminate against institutionally against anybody, but I just hate black people because they're black, then I'm not racist?
Oh,
that's not
shit.
really racism. That would be a prejudice or discrimination, but it's not really
Even
racism.
if I
Wouldn't
think
it be
black people are
wouldn't it be
inherently
prejudice
superior
based
to
on
me,
race?
that's not racist.
What if he just?
would
What
be
if?
a
What if Godless
prejudice.
just wants? What
It'd
if
be a
Godless just wants to
prejudice
go out and kill
Wouldn't
all
it be
black people?
wouldn't it be a prejudice based upon someone's race?
Good God, guys. There's
Sure.
literally 4 questions she's
Yeah,
been
seriously,
asked in the
oh
last
my
like
God.
5 seconds. Give her a second to respond.
I did respond. I said it would be a prejudice based on racism. Yeah.
You know
Brenda,
what's
How is that
based
not
on race.
racism?
You know what? Josh actually
Because-
agrees with Brenda. Josh agrees with what Brenda is saying right now. It's crazy.
The fact
No,
that you guys, the fact that you
I'll
guys
develop.
are
You know,
believing-
I'll review some things and develop a more rigorous response.
That
over
I
time.
can respect.
I-
As it's
Brenda,
Because
There's
right now
nothing like that
I don't
before.
have a rigorous response, but I can give one.
Well, one thing is to ask them, what is their definition of racism, and where do
Top-tier
they
trolling.
disagree with? Where do you guys disagree with her definition?
Well, I've
Given your
understood
definition.
I think
racism
there's
to
two
be
different definitions of race. One is that you believe that you're inherently superior to another race. A race is inherently inferior. And the other one is discriminating against. It doesn't have to be institutionally.
but it's based on race though, is the point. That's where I would disagree with Brenda. I agree with
Well-
the part of your latter statement, Godless, but if I'm not discriminating against someone based upon their race, I don't even see why we would call it racism.
But this is why I would say, for example, blacks
Oh,
can't
yay.
be blacks can't be racist
Check the chat.
because they have no institutional power.
Are you saying black people in America?
Yeah.
Okay.
Joe, isn't that what the like Jack's and Josh's position is what Brenda is saying right now?
Well, usually they take like a Marxist position or like way of looking at society. Usually they talk about these concepts in terms of class struggle. So I imagine, yeah, like the idea of racism is, it's baked into the context of like one class exploiting another one, right?
it was a really sad
But
day
Brenda,
for
you
me.
said black people can't be racist. So what about like transgender people? Because they're institutionally discriminated against, right? So transgender people
Correct.
can't be racist either.
That is correct. And discrimination against trans or gay people would constitute racism.
What about women? Aren't they a minority that's
Yeah, that would be. We would.
So a woman
we just
can't be
fold,
racist.
We just fold all minority groups that are oppressed in some way by the state into the concept of racism.
Wait, but white males are literally the minority now.
No, but they're in power and they're exercising that power.
That's not what I mean. When you say literally minority, are you talking about just how many there are,
Yes.
or how much
Correct.
influence do they have?
Numbers.
Because when
pure
you're talking
numbers.
about like a
I
minority,
think you could be right.
when you talk about minority though, it's a matter of how much influence do they have as like a class. So being a white male in
can't
America
absolutely lie.
specifically, it's clear that white males still have a lot of influence in America.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Joe. But there's
But
some
Joe-
there's some information that I'll review and make notes and have a better, more systematic presentation on it, if you like. I've been meaning to do this for a while.
The problem I have with that is, okay, let's grant you all that, right? But then Why use the word racist? You know you're going to be misunderstood all the time.
Yeah.
Why not just come up with another term?
Well, it's not me coming up with the term. It's a bunch of other people that have formulated this idea. So I'm taking
No, I
their
understand that, but
yeah.
don't you agree?
Yeah,
Why are they
Can
using
I
it?
offer?
I guess I
Sorry.
kind of agree with that, but there's not much I can do about that, I guess.
Yeah, can I let me posit a theory on that. I think that the reason why these folks, and by these folks I mean people who um, hold that position, don't want to come up with a new term, a novel term, is because racism is already packaged with like social implications. So if they redefine racism and claim that label to the people who disagree with them on this issue, right, or those people who are in power, then it carries social
Undermines.
baggage that are consequential.
Yeah. The other thing too is that
It's like it's like it would be the same thing as a person calling another person a nigger, right? Like
Right.
nobody wants to hear somebody call somebody else a nigger, right?
What if you're black
It's
though?
basically like saying, "Hey, that person just called somebody else a nigger." Is what it amounts to when you say that person is a racist, because when you say somebody's a racist, it carries all this historic baggage.
Well,
the
there's
other thing too is that so let's say that Brenda's definition of racism or racist was correct, right? I don't know how one could quantify influence in a meaningful way that would lend a proper usage of that definition. Like we use terms like institutional power in abstract ways, but where's the demarcation line, right? Like let's say there was a way to measure influence or power or who's oppressed in like a sort of mathematical way. Where's the demarcation line? At what point um, does me calling some black guy the N word become racist and stop being racist depending on whether I have more influence or people in my race have more influence or not?
And the
Black people.
caveat off that, right? Like this term, or how this is the term racism is being redefined, could apply to a bunch of different absurd areas. It could cross boundaries, such as like economic boundaries, right? Where you could say that white people, poor white people, are being subjected to racism against like Asian automakers when they
Sure,
put faulty
right.
airbags in their cars and shit, right?
Or
At,
it could
at the
be like
same
in an all black neighborhood, right? So let's say we draw a demarcation line. If there's no objective way to measure it, let's say we have an all black neighborhood, okay?
And you have a white guy
They're
living
the
there.
neighborhood watch, right? They have all or most of the influence over white people or Asians or people not of their race that walk into the neighborhood.
well,
Then we'd have to
I
go ahead.
still benefit from white privilege in that situation in many ways.
Yeah,
well,
but
there's a
your qualifier there was influence, institutional influence.
well,
Well,
there's
I
there's a
have
me there's a
institutional
more
influence.
meaningful way. There's a more meaningful way to try to put these together, I think. So you can separate the concept of racism into two parts. One being something like something terming along the lines of institutional racism, and the other you're defining along the lines of individual racism, and that seems to account much more greatly under the current definition for what we consider to be both of these main two types of racism.
I can relate a couple of instances in which, even though I'm, in a poor community, I'm poor myself, and there are a lot of African Americans in my same situation. Nevertheless, I benefit from white privilege. One example would be, for instance, that I could go to Wells Fargo and open up um, a bank account, and I didn't have to provide cosigners or anything like that. I could just do it. And a lot of the African Americans in my same building, same situation, previously homeless and stuff, they were denied um, the ability to open up a bank account. Um,
Do you got
so,
proof is because of race?
Well, that's what was going to be my
yeah, it's
question.
because I'm white. It's because
Well,
I'm white. It's
right, but if
out.
we're to look at this rigorously, Brenda, like, I'm trying to hear what you're saying here, right? And I've heard
Yeah,
many stories like this. So
yeah.
let's break
It
this
happens
down.
a lot.
In
A-
what
Another
way?
example.
In
Another
what way
example.
could we know though that it was
Well,
based on you being white?
You also have the
well.
privilege.
I guess I can't. I can't know the the inner motivations of the bank teller person. I guess, but it seems to be pretty consistent
Well, all you're
that
saying,
that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
whites are able to get a bank account, a checking and savings account, where the blacks in my area, in my same building, couldn't.
But see,
Um,
that same mechanism of approval, right, was used to exploit people who couldn't or shouldn't have gotten mortgages
Right.
before the housing bubble, right? So we could say
yeah,
that the system was not being racist when they were exploiting minorities and the impoverished uh, before the housing bubble popped.
yeah, yeah. Um, well, another example I would say is I've had a number of instances, well, a couple maybe, where I've been in a bus and there's been altercations between there was a homeless white woman and she got into altercation with a black woman, and when the bus driver stopped the bus and the police were called, and the police driver, I mean the policeman, I volunteered, but he came to me and accepted my testimony as to what happened, and you know I just think that my testimony to him was taken a lot more seriously than it would have been, it seemed to me, than from the black people involved.
Why?
Um,
Why though?
How
Why?
many?
Why do you think?
because I was white and generally,
No, wait.
looked okay and was
No, 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 no.
generally
No, I
appeared,
understand
to
that would be
be
entailed,
well
right?
dressed and stuff.
Right, but why do
I,
you think that? Why do you think that's what he thought?
now here's a
If
better
anything, gives you an
I don't have conclusive proof on that though.
okay?
were
No,
there
I
other
understand, but
people on the
I don't see how I could.
yeah, that's my point though, Brenda. Is that in
I
order
know,
for
I
look,
know,
there's
but
even
still, you can
inductively, right?
go get
Even
reasonable.
inductively,
You can have a reasonable inference about what
you
somebody's
were
mental
there
could
states are.
if you provided a reason, right, that you could appeal to, that would even inductively in an argument show that that those thoughts, right, were present. You don't have to look, like be a mind reader, right? I agree with you. There are tons of people out there who are racist, right? And you don't have to know their thoughts to figure out that they're racist. I'll give you an example. A white person who walks up to a black person and calls them nigger, yeah, you don't have to know their brain state, but what they utter and what they say would be a good indication. So when I ask you why you would think that, I'm asking for some sort of indication other than maybe he made a facial expression or he spent more time on you than a black person. It would be a non sequitur to me to say because he spent more time on
Yeah,
you
I
or
don't have enough information, I don't think, to say that. My memory of the event is simply that it really struck me that the officer seemed to take my account very seriously. And then afterwards, and after it was all done, um, you know, the bus driver, who was an African American, thanked me profusely for sticking up for the guy, because the white woman clearly instigated the altercation. She was the instigator, because she called her a nigger,
so
and then the black. You call a black woman a nigger in public? Holy shit! You're in for a shitload of trouble.
yeah, yeah.
Well,
So
wait a minute.
here's what I'm
So,
getting from you so far, Brenda. Okay. And this is the problem generally that I have with a lot of people who believe in white privilege. It
I think
seems
it's a fact on the ground. It's
well,
absolutely
I
true.
know
Yeah.
you think that, but the problem that I think that is with that, and with a lot of people who claim that, is that it's an abstract thing that is pointed to, right? That it exists in society systemically, and the U.S. is rampant with it. But when someone really presses on the justification for the claim, it's sort of like you almost always get the same sort of answer that you gave, which
Well,
is
see,
this,
here's
I
the other
just kind of got that feeling. And I
here's the
don't
other
think that's
thing
enough to
too,
go
right,
on.
Declan? Right. So you were talking earlier about demarcation, right? And I'm kind of I'm on this thing about inclusion and exclusion criteria, right? And so you could say that like white privilege isn't just something that white folk impose on other people who don't match the mold of white people, right? Because in black culture, you see light-skinned black people being more desirable sexually and in the entertainment industry, etc. Right?
Mhm.
So it would apply
Barack Obama. Barack
white
Obama.
privilege would then apply to would be something that black people are imposing on their own people and on other people.
I don't even think that you can, for the reasons that I stated before, I don't even think that one could say that with any reasonable. I don't think they can make that proposition reasonably. I don't think that's even enough to make that proposition reasonably. I mean, it's the
Well,
same thing with inclusion.
right,
I'm sorry, go
but
ahead.
that's why I'm sorry, Declan. I'm just trying to stop you because I want to clarify my point. My point is exactly that, right? There's no demarcation. There's no strict inclusion and exclusion criteria where this phenomenon starts and stops, or where we can identify this phenomenon. So I'm in agreement with you. I
Right.
don't think that Brenda's like, and Brenda, I want to clarify. I'm not saying that you're like lying about your experiences or whatever. I just don't know that we can conclude that that's evidence for the phenomena that that you're positing.
It might not be. You know, I could say that. I might not be the best um, argument. I might not have the best argument for it.
Well,
No, but
So can I ask a wait? I want to ask a quick question. So you're saying a white woman called a black woman a nigger? That's horrible. And were there other black
She
people on the
did a
bus
lot
that
more.
could have gone? Is there? Okay, yeah, that's horrible.
It
I
was
don't
it,
like that.
she
That's bad.
taunted her over a period of time, and then
Yeah, okay, that's horrible.
after
Okay.
several exchanges, the black woman said, "Fuck this shit." She threw down her coat in a way that only a black woman can. It was like, and the
Okay,
head movement,
that's horrible.
and it was on. It was on, and
Yes,
her
yes.
boyfriend jumped in between, prevented actual fisticuffs,
Great.
you know, and so then and then when the policeman came, he had to disentangle. Well, not nobody was entangled, but he had to assess the situation. And
Okay.
it seemed to me that my account was taken seriously in a way that seemed
Okay, can I ask my question,
out of
please?
proportion. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Were there other black people on the bus he could have asked, or other white people? Were you the only one? How many people were on the bus? That's what
Well, not
I'm curious
everybody
about.
volunteered to give a statement to
Oh,
the
so you
police officer.
volunteered. So you
Well, of
volunteered then.
course, yeah, of course.
So he didn't come to you, you went to him.
Well,
oh
yeah, but
shit.
not everybody did, and the bus was full. There were a lot of people there, but they didn't want to get involved. You know, the people are just
Case
like that.
closed.
No, it isn't. I mean,
Yeah,
I
it
wasn't.
actually is, Brenda. He's making a
No,
very no. Look, this is what I'll say. I don't think deductively you could say from what Bacon is saying that the proposition that I was putting forward is true, but I think it lends a lot of credence to it, which is that you see white privilege in this situation because he took you seriously, or what you seem to be more seriously. But that would be something that we would expect synonymously with someone who clearly saw something that they thought was doing wrong and volunteered to the police officer to give a witness statement.
The
If
way
someone
you
volunteers, right? Because a lot of people are like, I want no fucking part of this, right? If someone
yeah,
volunteers,
most of the people there didn't want to get involved.
right? So let's,
White
I'm sorry,
and
go ahead.
black, didn't
Right.
want to get
So
involved.
if it was the case, let's say it was the case, he took you more seriously. Again, the problem is wading through all of these variables, because I could see a police officer taking you more seriously specifically because you volunteered. That
Yeah, and a
police
lot of
officer may have, an experience of people never or almost never wanting to talk or get involved as a witness.
right,
I
and if
suppose
we're
that's
talking
possible. So maybe that wasn't the best example.
Yeah, it's also when you
I'll
seem to
I'll
seek
sort of
out it.
agree.
You
I'll
seem
sort
to.
of agree that it wasn't a good example.
I mean, you seek out experiences to therefore explain your already preconceived biases.
Could be
It's
right.
called meeting your expectations. Fulfilling it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well, the way I understood the way Brenda was explaining it, I could have taken it wrong, was that the officer went to her. But since she went to the officer, it changes the whole scenario for me.
Well, I thought I said that at the beginning, but I did say that I thought he took me more seriously than it seemed to me was typical.
God damn it, Brenda. We talked about this a long time ago, remember?
No, we didn't.
Yeah, we did. This is
What?
the time that you
Feelings are powerful?
No, this
Am
is
I-
the were you with your family member or some shit? You were with somebody, I think. I haven't been listening too hard, but
I don't know what you're talking
you
about,
told
John
me
John.
you told me this story a long time ago.
I don't
About
recall
the
telling
cops
anybody
and how the
here.
cops treated you so badly. The cops were just so wrong, right? And I
I
explained
don't
to you
recall
that was
talking
their job.
about this situation at all before here.
Well, I might be
I don't
talking about
recall it. Oh,
I might be
okay.
talking about something else.
Might have been. Refresh my memory.
I don't remember too much. I just remember that you were really upset about how these cops treated you, and you thought that they did something wrong. And I remember disagreeing with you. I was like, "Nah, I didn't really do anything wrong, Brenda."
Wasn't that when they came? I think I don't know. I don't want to. Did the cops come to your building? Was that a scenario that you're referring to, John, Brenda?
No,
Maybe?
no, because I used to
I,
talk about cops all the time and how
I don't
like
recall
one thing,
cops.
whether or not they can kill you and shit. And I remember
Uh,
Brenda chimed in like, "Oh, these motherfuckers pulled a gun on me or some shit."
that
And
wasn't me. I've never had a gun pulled on me ever in my life. That wasn't me. You must be remembering somebody else.
hmm.
I have never had a gun pulled on me ever.
Yeah, cops are not out there to be your friend at all. It's not their job to be friendly.
Actually, it kind of is. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
you tell
simply
that
in
to people
America.
out
It's
there
simply in
calling
America and a lot of other
killers
countries.
and
In a lot of
gangsters.
other countries, that they are very, very much a
Well,
part of the society and the social work.
yeah, I
All
agree.
these
It,
cops in
I
these
think
bad areas, they're trained to go home at night.
yeah,
That's it.
that's the American way, and I think it's wrong-headed.
I
You
agree.
know,
I agree.
I think cops ought to be um, get to know the people in whatever region area they're assigned to. They should get to know the people, be personable, and have a good relationship with the ordinary people. So that
Hmm.
and that increases law enforcement, and it also increases the safety for the officer because
Yeah.
then those people are because the truth is that most people, by far and away, most people um, to have want the cops to do their job and stuff like that. They're not.
I will tell you. Okay, when I was a military policeman, I was really big on community policing for that reason. Not just because opinions and feelings, right? Because it's evidence based. Community policing has a positive effect.
And
There's
you,
some literature.
yeah.
There's some literature that says that there's nothing that can be gleaned from it. It's all subjective, et cetera, et cetera. My experience aligns with the most recent literature on community policing. And so I was really, really big on that. And I disagree with Brenda on any other issue you like, but she's right on this. That
And you establish a relationship with the community, and they'll come to you then.
yeah, yeah.
You
So
know.
let me tell you some anecdote, right? So it was a Christmas exodus, is what they call it on the military post, because military posts are just completely fucking empty during the holidays. Everybody goes home, and we had a flood because we had a warm Christmas after a heavy snow, and there was a house with like an extension cord coming out of the kitchen window that draped into the flooded area of the lawn between the house and a shed. And so I went up, knocked on the door, looked in the house, shined my flashlight in there. Nobody was in there, but the extension cord was coming right out of the kitchen window. So I just popped the window, unlocked the door, unplugged the extension cord, made sure that everything was secure in the house, locked everything back up, and then left a note on the door, said, hey, you know, my name is Sergeant so-and-so, and I just wanted to let you know that I was inside your house only to secure it so that there was no fire hazard. And this person filed a complaint against me, but because I was big on community policing, I started this whole policy about community policing. Everybody in the fucking neighborhood knew me. So when this complaint was filed against me, everybody went to the neighbor and was like, what the fuck are you doing? This was somebody who was like new to the post in the neighborhood, and they had no fucking clue who I was, but everybody else did. Like I could stop at somebody's house and just see how they're doing. They're like, oh, we're having a barbecue in the back, would you like to come have a burger with me or something? Everybody knew who I was, right? They're trying this right now in Brighton Park, Chicago, predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, and the community policing is having a demonstrable positive effect there. Policing ought to be the way that Brenda is posing, but I mean, the fact of the
I'll
matter is
bring
that,
you around
like
on
she's
the other
saying,
stuff too. I'll bring you around on the other stuff too.
the thing is that JonJon, you're right, and that's the practical necessity in some parts of the country. But it's wrong. It shouldn't be that way, because
Well,
we
the way
have evidence-based research
comment on
to
what Brenda
show
was
that
saying.
community policing is actually more effective than just regular patrols where there's no community policing and there's no community interaction.
Well, I have an issue with what you and Brenda are saying because of the culture I was talking about earlier. That culture goes against everything you're explaining right now. These kids are taught to not be snitches, to not talk to the cops. They're not
What
only
the
taught that,
wait,
they're
wait,
taught
wait,
that they'll
wait.
die.
Right,
Right? And
I
we're talking
understand
about
that.
high
So,
crime areas. We're talking about where the gangsters are.
God damn it, dude. So listen, like when Brenda
This
said
shit
that
would
she
work in an
listen,
all-white community.
John, listen, when she was saying that she volunteered her testimony, right? That is why the cop took her seriously, because that's very rare. So I am not disagreeing with you on that point. But the way you change that isn't the fucking cult. The culture isn't going to change itself without evidence that there's a reason to change externally, right? Where that starts is where fucking cops start actually getting involved in the communities in which they patrol, and they start developing a fucking rapport with the communities that they're in.
A cop goes into a neighborhood, and the first person that walks up to that cop will be dead a week later. Do you understand that?
Yeah, I get that. But there's all, dude, there's,
It's
look,
a
I
nightmare
can
to be even associated with a cop, or
look,
even
if I was
someone
listen to me. If I was not sitting in my van with the garage door up and the fucking van started because I can't talk like this inside the house, and I was at my computer, I would cite you fucking reference after reference where there's teams, community teams working with cops, where they've changed that. They've changed culture as a result of the proactive activity of police officers doing community policing rather than reactive policing. It's fucking there. The evidence is there. The studies are there. It's demonstrable. Can't argue with it.
Yeah, I don't know. I agree that that's possible. That it's a better way of policing.
Do you remember those old like 1950s posters where you see like the cop like sitting in the donut shop with the kid, with the like, you know, and he's like talking to the kid, and
Yeah,
it's a,
I
like
can see how
burly
that would
cop
work
and
better.
shit.
I think you're right. I think it would work better. I think
Yeah, that's the model. That's the model of policing that we need to get back to.
Yeah, I agree. That's great, but that's still not going to be able to combat this culture, right?
But you can't even be you can't even be a pragmatist and hold that view, because pragmatism necessitates your opinion being in line with the evidence.
Well, I would say that there's evidence that this isn't going to work.
What's the fucking evidence?
There's evidence that it would have. It's not like, first off, there's no evidence that this will have any effect on the culture that I'm talking about.
I just fucking told you it's the case. And if I were sitting at my computer and not in the van,
yeah, but to what degree? Right? Maybe slightly. Maybe a few kids will come.
No, dude, they've like turned over cultures in neighborhoods like a pancake with community policing, completely 180 degrees.
And John backtracks on an
In my
issue he knows
opinion,
nothing
there's-
about.
In my opinion, there's places out there where this is not simply just too far-fetched. I agree with you all the
It's
way.
not viable right now, but it doesn't mean it's
But there are
impossible.
places out there where the cops are too scared to go. In every
Yeah,
state.
of course. And why the fuck do you think they're scared to go there? Because
Well,
they
community
can't go
policing
there.
will not be
If
able to
they-
infiltrate such communities.
Bullshit. They've done it in fucking Brighton Park, Chicago. You can look it up. Google it right now.
If it worked in Chicago, then it restores some.
I've
faith
got
in
a
the concept.
buddy who's up. His fucking beat is on the southwest side of Chicago, Brighton Park. Him and I were military police officers together, and he'll fucking tell you the same goddamn thing. Community policing, rather than reactive policing, is what makes it gets rid of discrimination, the kind of discrimination that folks are protesting right now, and it makes cops safer, which was my big thing when I was a patrol supervisor. If it makes cops safer, I'm fucking for it. And if it just happens to have ancillary side effects like reducing discrimination and fucking changing cultures about how the fucking community interacts with the state, then that's just a cherry on top.